Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. For years, Tobias Forge has built Ghost into something that feels much bigger than a band. The characters, the costumes, the stories, the music videos, and even the stage production. It has always had a very cinematic quality to it. But lately, Tobias has been talking less about simply making Ghost look like a movie, and more about actually making movies himself. And interestingly enough, this isn't something that seems to have come out of nowhere. In a recent interview with Metal Hammer, Tobias talked about one of the earliest memories of understanding how movies actually create an emotional response. I must have been 5, I watched most of it myself, but the scene that really got me spooked was when Hopper is underneath that boat, he finds the tooth, and then all of a sudden that corpse comes out of the hole. That was traumatic. But my dad was a photographer working in film and TV, and he had tons of these American cinematographer magazines. We were looking through a segment on the Jaws intro, and he was like, "You know how this sounds scary? It's not really scary. There's no shark. It's only the music that makes it sound horrible." And that was like, oh shit, that's how you create magic. That fascination with what happens behind the camera would continue to grow. When asked if he began taking an interest in the technical side of filmmaking at an early age, Tobias explained, "Absolutely. My brother did a very similar thing when we were watching Scarface. It's when they take the guy into the shower and they're going to cut him up with a chainsaw. He was like, watch now, because they're going to turn the camera out from the room, and the only thing you hear is what you think it sounds like, but you never see him being cut up with a chainsaw." Those two things were my earliest memories of understanding what movie magic was, that really gravitated me towards filmmaking. And eventually, that interest would become something Tobias began seriously considering as a career. I'm not very educated, I'm not scholastic, I have no degree in anything, and I always saw filmmaking as something that required a certain amount of academia. You need to go to film school, you need to be technically savvy, which is true if you want to become a cameraman or a sound guy. It helps if you know how it works. But at the end of the day, it's a cooperation. And if you're able to communicate ideas, you can actually get quite far. I'm not saying that I can become anything, but the same way that I focused on Ghost, if I focused the same way on trying to make some of my film ideas happen, if I invested the same amount of passion, maybe I could have a job. And it sounds like Tobias has now reached the point where he's actually putting that idea into practice. In an interview with Kerrang, he was asked about his growing involvement in filmmaking and whether he was essentially beginning to swap music for movies. For the last couple years, I have been very inspired by the idea of pursuing that career to whatever extent that I can, to wherever capacity I can get into the film business. And what I mean is not making ghost films, but making other films. The caveat here being, to what capacity, I don't know yet. I'm working on several film concepts simultaneously, and that alone is a career. That's something that you have to invest time in, and you have to commit to. That last part is interesting because Tobias isn't describing filmmaking as simply another creative hobby that he might occasionally experiment with. He's talking about actually building another career. And apparently, some of those projects are already much further along than just an idea on a piece of paper. The film project that I was just involved in, that basically finished yesterday, that is going to be a little bit closer in time. That's going to happen in the fall. But a lot of the other things that I'm working on is sort of stretching into 2, 3, 4 years. There's a lot on the table, but it's hard to speak of them right now because they're at various stages. And that gives us a picture of where Tobias is right now. Ghost is temporarily disappearing, but Tobias isn't. Instead, it seems like Tobias is taking the same creative drive that helped him build Ghost and applying it to an entirely different medium. And considering that filmmaking has apparently been an interest of his since childhood, it almost feels less like a sudden career change and more like he's finally getting the opportunity to explore something that's been there all along. With him saying that some of these film projects can be up to 4 years away, hopefully that doesn't mean anything ghost related again wouldn't come until after that. but knowing he feels he has to put just as much time and energy into filmmaking as he did with Ghost, if it has to be that long of a wait, then it'll still be worth it. But I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think Tobias could successfully transition into filmmaking? And would you actually want to see a movie directed by Tobias that has absolutely nothing to do with Ghost? I for sure do, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And speaking of Ghost, we've also got a brand new design available in the shop, his Story of Vice, our own take on this Miami Vice City inspired design. We've put a lot of little Ghost related Easter eggs into the artwork, and we're also holding a giveaway connected to the design. Check out the community post for all the details on how you can enter. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our upcoming videos. And for more on Ghosts, take a look at the rest of the channel, because if you have Ghost, you have everything.